This is the coming revolution in higher consciousness. Listen now to Elizabeth Clare Prophet, educator, author, and authority on the most exciting story of our time, the coming revolution in higher consciousness. This week, you'll hear the second of 3 segments of The State of Education in America, an eye-opening expose by Elizabeth Clare Prophet. In Part 1, Mrs. Prophet analyzed problems in American education. Today, you'll learn some startling facts about textbook content and how television affects children.
I'd like to talk to you about textbook content. The educational establishment has determined that content doesn't matter. A current textbook series called Impressions is designed to teach reading and literature. Here's a poem from the Impressions 2nd grade reader. It's called Yawn by Susan Wellerlin. I'm so tired I can't go on, I'm so tired. All I want to do is yawn. I want to go right home and fall into a heap. And I can't finish this poem because I'm falling. And then the dots go down the page. Before reading the poem, the teacher is instructed to discuss bedtime rules with the class. After the poem, the teacher is instructed to teach the children to hypothesize. Discuss reasons why the boy might have been so tired. The teacher is then told to try an experiment. Without telling the children why, yawn and see how many children display the automatic response of yawning too. Can you imagine a bigger waste of classroom time or a greater insult to the soul of the child who has come to be taught? That child has really come to school with a great anticipation of meeting his inner teacher, of having the outer person who is his teacher connect him with his inner real self. Isn't that something we've all been wanting all our lives, to find the someone that's going to help us to establish the inner tie with our own inner reality? This is the teaching of the anti-teacher, otherwise known as the Antichrist, because it tears the child from that Christ and takes him down a primrose path that finds him at day's end in the astral plane. He goes home in the astral plane, turns on the TV set, and continues in the illusions of his day, his soul starving for that living truth. Every reading series today has a companion set of workbooks. Most of the time, the workbooks are filled with activities that teach nothing and are simply a waste of time. Here's an example of the workbook pages that go along with the poem Yawn. The page is titled Sleepy Me. It says, use your own ideas to complete the poem. I'm so tired I can't go on. I'm too tired too. And the student is supposed to fill in the blank. Another poem in the 2nd grade reader is called My Sunday Socks. It's written by Dr. Fitzhugh Dodson. The poem reads, Monday morning I put rocks in my socks. Tuesday morning I put socks in a box. Wednesday morning I put the box on a goat. Thursday morning I put the goat in a coat. Friday morning I put the coat in a tree. Saturday morning I put the tree in the sea. Sunday morning I put the socks on me. That is not stupid, it's wicked. I submit to you that that is wicked and that it is evil, and that the target is our children, the children of America. You will not find this outside of America, unless it's in English-speaking countries like Canada. The rest of the nations of the world would not tolerate this in their classrooms. My Sunday Socks is accompanied by a workbook page. The student is supposed to fill in the blanks and add in words that rhyme with sock, coat, and tree. This writing takes the child through the looking glass, just as Alice in Wonderland did, into the astral plane, where there are no rights or wrongs. All is situation ethics. It's the astral plane all the way. By thinking on these things, children are trained to live in the astral plane. These poems are a misuse of FAUCI. They are keys that lock the soul in the dungeon of unreality. Think of a second grader. It is perplexing, it is tormenting, it is divisive, it is confusing. It is though someone has locked him in a crooked box. These are crooked thoughts and crooked ideas. They don't jive with the reality that he sees, the geometry of the trees and the birds and the flowers, or even a simple brick in his hands. There's nothing geometric about such words. They are a waste of breath and language. They distort language and its high uses that the children could be finding in true good literature. And I submit to you that the teachers are prisoners of the system. They have to teach it whether they like it or not, if they want their jobs and they want their pay. And this is the bureaucracy of socialism within this system that we've been talking about. Here is Rattlesnake Skipping Song by Dennis Lee from the Impressions third grade reader. Mississauga rattlesnakes eat brown bread, and Mississauga rattlesnakes fall down dead. If you catch a caterpillar, feed him apple juice. If you catch a rattlesnake, turn him loose. You can hear the rock beat right in the song. It makes you produce the rock beat just to read it. There is no sense to it. It doesn't go logically from A to B to C. It doesn't teach you the mathematics of words, or that words are chalices for ideas that follow a sequence of logic. I'm telling you that this English course is wiping out the development of the mind for mathematics and science because it is totally unscientific. Since the educationists have decreed that no one can make value judgments, a poem written by one of them is just as good as a poem written by Keats or Shelley. In the fourth grade reader, the textbook series Impressions gives us a profile of Dennis Lee, author of Rattlesnake Skipping Song. I'm going to analyze what he says about poetry because he reveals to us exactly where his poems come from. Dennis Lee says, "Suppose a large green poem came and sat on your head. What would you do? Imagine it's kind of enormous, and it shambles around as if it wants a biscuit and licks your face. You can see in the slide the picture of the poem on his head. It looks just like an entity out of the astral plane." Lee concludes, "There is only one thing to do. If you want to get a poem out of your hair, this is how. You must write it on a piece of paper. In other words, the only way to make an entity happy is to let him speak or write through you." The children are then given a workbook exercise to write their own poetry. Children are impressionable, and this series is aptly titled Impressions. This series is used for the misuse of the third eye and the imagination of the child. When you have all of those choices to make about all of those disjointed happenings that could happen to you in a day, your imagination is working. You are seeing it. You are creating it because you still have that faculty at that young age. It hasn't been programmed out of you by TV yet. And so here are our children being called upon to misuse the third eye. They see the picture, they see the demon sitting on the head, and they think that's where poems come from, so they sit down and think, visualize a demon on their head, and take a dictation from an astral entity that comes into their vulnerable auras, through the aura of the writer and the teacher, who is an authority figure whom they respect and love, who is giving them this lesson. This is how they are taught, quote, creative writing. Here are the workbook pages that go along with Rattlesnake Skipping Song. Here's another poem in the third grade reader, Revenge by Myra Cone Livingston. "When I find out who took the last cookie out of the jar and left me a bunch of stale old messy crumbs, I'm going to take me a handful and crumb up someone's bed." This is the psychology of venting, revenge, and rage. If somebody has wronged you, then do wrong to them. It's the eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. There is no grace, no Jesus Christ, no love for the child in this textbook, no love whatsoever. It's a conscious, forceful, willful programming by conscious witchcraft. You might as well call it Satanism, because that's what it is. The stories in the readers are also pointless. Adults, parents, and teachers are never portrayed as guides. The children in the stories are expected to figure everything out for themselves. Take, for example, a story called How Six Found Christmas. It's about a girl who doesn't know what Christmas is. She's looking for it in the north. On her way, she meets animals who join her in her search. They don't know what Christmas is either. Finally, she finds an old green bottle. It is pretty and shiny. She decides that that is a Christmas. She takes it home and fills it with berries and pine branches. And that is the end of the story. The motto at the end reads, "Christmas is not only where you find it, it's what you make of it." Nowhere in the story is there a description of what Christmas really is. It teaches the child Jesus has nothing to do with Christmas. You can have your own Christmas any way you want it, figure it out any way you want. For you, that's Christmas. Impression's 4th grade reader has an excerpt from a story about a boy who develops a strange fever called chocolate fever. The doctor diagnoses the boy as being nothing but a walking candy bar. The story ends after the diagnosis. The boy does not get over the fever. Pointless. No goals in life, no goal fitting, no goal setting, no moral, no virtue, no interest. It just makes you feel like you're all screwed into some kind of contorted room where there are no straight walls and no corners. You might as well take children through a menagerie of distorted mirrors, because that's exactly what is being done to their consciousness. And that's happening all over America today. You think these school books are just somewhere off somewhere in a school you never heard of? They're in the schools where your children are going. Your children are being submitted to this. And then we wonder why they have emotions that seem out of sorts, or they're hyperactive, and they're given Ritalin, and on and on. How could anyone of any intelligence, and all children are intelligent, how could anyone of intelligence sit in a classroom and not become depressed to hear these stories? The worst thing about them is that there's nothing positive in them. No one does anything good. There are no heroes. Adults and children are selfish, lazy, and stupid. Some stories even encourage disobedience to parents. For example, Tales for the Perfect Child. In the 4th grade reader, the characters are portrayed as cats. The illustrations are ugly. The story is about a girl named Ruby whose mother tells her to watch her younger brother Clyde while the mother takes a bath. Ruby takes her mother's statement literally. She watches Clyde spill rice, flour, salt, sugar, and coffee all over the kitchen floor. She does nothing to stop him. When her mother comes out of the bath and says, "I told you to watch Clyde," Ruby answers back, "I was watching him. I was watching him the whole time." Ruby's mother does nothing to punish her. She lets her go over to her friend's house to play. Pointless story. Nothing is taught to the child except possibly disrespect, smart aleck remark, disobedience, willful vexation of the mother, and the mother is totally placid. She takes a bath. She says nothing to the child when the child has not done what the child knows she should have done. The Impressions textbooks not only do not teach great literature, they distort it. A limerick reads, "She stood on the bridge at midnight. Her lips were all a-quiver. She gave a cough, her leg fell off and floated down the river." It is the suddenness of the macabre. Just when you think you're about to enter a Longfellow poem, you have to see someone's leg cut off. It's totally astral. It's like a nightmare or a horror story. At no point does the student learn that this limerick makes an allusion to Longfellow's famous poem, The Bridge. I stood on the bridge at midnight as the clocks were striking the hour, and the moon rose o'er the city behind the dark church tower. Longfellow's poems were written for the Aquarian Age child. They loved to memorize them, to recite them, to hear Hiawatha, and they perceive the profound meaning that is caught in a cadence that truly takes one to the higher octaves. Every child's parent should have Longfellow at the bedside table of the child and read him poems of Longfellow. Teach him vocabulary from Longfellow. Give him that grounding. Give your child such a treasure of wisdom and teaching at home that if he must be in school, he will recognize the difference and discriminate before the consciousness of non-discrimination is programmed into him. In other words, non-Christ consciousness. The Impressions series has been criticized by conservatives for having too many references to witchcraft and ghosts. Here's a picture of a poem in the second grade reader entitled Teeny Tiny Ghost. The fourth grade reader contains a story called The Witch Who Wasn't. The story is about a witch who was 700 years old. She was still considered a child among witches. Her mother and grandmother want her to work evil spells. But try as she might, she cannot work any evil spells. Her spells turn spiders into puppies and snakes into chocolate cakes. The story ends with her still unable to meet her family's expectations. This teaches the child that though she might live to be 700 years old, she will never be expected by her parents unless she can be a super perfectionist or a miracle worker or perform some feats that are impossible to perform. And therefore, since she knows she can't perform them, she might as well not try and sink back into an oblivion of 700 years into the astral plane. To me, this is what the absorbent mind of the child would do with this story. It would not be sitting there objective against the background of a lot of experience in life and reality. The child is newly formed, very young, very impressionable. And these are the impressions that these in the educational establishment are putting upon our children. The final story in the fourth grade reader is particularly depressing. It is about a boy named Willie who tries to win a dog sled race to get money to pay the taxes on his grandfather's farm. It's a story of woe, and that life is woe, but for no reason. Not for initiation, not for karmic accountability, just because life is gray and shades of gray. In order to do this, he has to beat an Indian who has never lost a race. Impossible competition, I might as well not try. That's what it's telling to the child reading this. Willie has only one dog named Searchlight. The Indian has 5 dogs. Willie is in the lead for the first half of the 5-mile race because his sled is lighter and smaller. But on the home stretch, the Indian begins to gain on him. Searchlight made a valiant effort. As he approaches the finish line, Searchlight's heart bursts. She dies instantly. The Indian stops short of the finish line to give Willie the chance to win. Willie carries the dead dog across the finish line and wins the race. The point is sheer morbidity. When in your entire lifetime have you ever heard of a dog's heart bursting and the dog dropping dead? I have never heard of such a situation. It's an unexpected tragedy. Just as you're getting into a story where there could be some positive moral to it, on comes the tragedy like an onslaught. It's profoundly depressing, and children are depressed today. God knows they have enough to be depressed about just by the karma intensifying in these years. It's not true to life. And so in these writings, everything happens by morbid chance. There's no hand of providence in the scene. There's no free will. There's no ability of the individual to rise and challenge circumstances and rise above them. No lesson of the path of life. Looking at these textbooks is why I could tell you in my opening remarks today, it is better to have your children at home and get perhaps a lesser education than to be in a school and be so programmed. What happens to you when you're 20 and 30 and 40 and you have to deal with your psychology that was programmed into you when you're 4 and 5 years old through these educational materials? Well, I can tell you, because I deal with people every day in this community at Summit University and all over the world who are Chelas. And they fight and work on their psychology, and it's not easy to deal with. You've been programmed. The building blocks of your mind and your heart and your emotions have been set in. Now you want to become a disciple of Jesus Christ and an adept on the path. And you have to go back and recreate yourself and undo line by line these threads of darkness sewn in the garment of your soul. Psychology is a very important part of the spiritual path, and there are two different paths we're talking about. The spiritual path of initiation and discipleship, and then the path of your psychology, the study of your soul. Some problems you have are psychological problems. Some problems you have are spiritual problems. You need to learn the difference because you have two different techniques to deal with them. With the spiritual path and the spiritual problem, you use the sacred fire in your dynamic decrees and your violet flame and all of the different techniques of mantra for the acceleration of light in your chakras, which enables you to transmute karma and throw off the weight and the burdens of that karma. When it comes to the problem of psychology, it is something you have to consciously know about and work through. It is such a deep-seated problem that you have to understand the cause and core of it before you can cure it. The violet flame is an adjunct to that, but the violet flame cannot take from you the necessity of probing and understanding why you have a repetitive anger or a repetitive fear, or why time and time again you react a certain way to a certain person or a certain set of circumstances. Until you get the keys to that, you will not change. And so you have to have the keys and work. And this work is as Jesus at Gethsemane, sweating, as it were, great drops of blood. This is intense inner psychological work to clear the way for the next step of spiritual progress. The two go hand in hand. So after going through the Impressions text, I would like to tell you that it's typical of most major textbook series today. And I'm sure you can see why you should not allow your children to use them. And if such matrices have been impressed upon your psyche, your soul, then you can see why you need the violet flame, as well as the study and of your psychology, as well as therapy if you need it. While children are reading these stupid stories, they are not learning about the great ideas upon which our civilization was founded. Today there is a great debate about whether children should learn about Western civilization or about the culture of other ethnic groups. My statement is that nobody should be race conscious. The bodies we wear have nothing to do with our souls. Everybody should learn about the great people of the world, no matter what their racial background. It doesn't matter that our founding fathers were white. Everybody needs to learn about them. Multiculturalism teaches racism by drawing attention to the color of people's skin instead of to the quality of their greatness, their deeds of heroism, and what they have contributed. It doesn't matter what somebody's ethnic background is. If there's a contribution that's real to civilization, we should hear about it. We mustn't teach children that somebody's color made him different. I don't have anything against children learning about other cultures, but they do need to learn about Western civilization first, for the very reason that the principles of freedom arose out of Western civilization and the Judeo-Christian tradition. This history molded us to be able to receive Saint Germain's great dispensation to America, his sponsorship of this nation, and enabled us to be the torchbearers of freedom in all fields. We once carried that torch. Many, many have dropped it, and other nations have picked it up, and they are carrying that flame of freedom that we should also be carrying. Americans must know American history factually as it happened. They have to know about the Judeo-Christian tradition, and they have to know about European history. Otherwise, they won't understand how freedom evolved and how its flame is in jeopardy today. If they don't know how easily the flame of freedom can be extinguished, they can't be trusted as torchbearers of the age. They will let go of it too easily. People of all races and nations who have come to America are part of that destiny. They are Americans whether they happen to be Asian or black or Hispanic or Indian. And white America, you better believe it, because these so-called tortoises are about to overtake you and your children. And the first shall come in last, and the last shall come in first. Now I'd like to take up the subject of television. In doing further research, updating us from my comments in 1980, I have learned some very valuable lessons and insights that are a piercing of my heart and a quickening of my spirit. I think all of us have made a similar mistake, and I'm going to tell you what the mistake is when we come to it in this section. As far as I'm concerned, television presents the most serious challenge of all to education and to the soul of the child. For starts, there's a TV in every household, and it's not under lock and key. TV causes 10 major problems. Number 1, children simply spend too much time watching TV. And it's the time factor that is critical here. Who allows them to do this? Where are their parents? Are they watching TV too? Are they not home? Don't they care about the mental and emotional development of their child? Are they unaware of the danger? Or are they just too weak to say no? The latest figures from A.C. Nielsen show that children ages 2 to 17 watch an average of 23 to 25 hours of television each week. As far as I'm concerned, television is irritating just because it's on. It doesn't even matter what it's showing. I do watch the news and the news programs, but to be in front of a TV set too long, I find is absolutely irritating. It offends the psyche, the metabolism, the sensitivity, the soul, the whole identity of the individual. Can you imagine 25 hours a week before the TV set? When you have no perspective of life, you're a child. Everything you're learning comes out of that tube. We approach TV from the background of a rich life, of it being not the major thing that stimulates us, but this is the major stimulation of the mind, the emotions, the development of children. This estimate does not even include the number of hours spent watching TV, using a VCR, or playing Nintendo, a popular home video game. These figures show that the average American child spends more time watching TV than he does in school. Most public schools operate about a 6-hour day and 180-day a year. That means children going to those schools spend 1,080 hours in school each year. The average 12 to 17-year-old watches 23 hours of TV a week. In the course of a year, these children will view 1,196 hours of television. Thus, they will spend 116 hours more watching TV than attending school each year. Why do parents and teachers stand for it? Are they hypnotized? Why don't schools just assign more homework and flunk those that don't do it? I'll tell you why. They're afraid to take the blame for flunking children. But if the schools won't flunk them, life will. Better they learn the path of initiation early, and that it is possible to fail tests in school and in life. The 1990 National Assessment of Educational Progress math test, the first state-by-state comparison of math achievement, found that the public schools in all states were doing a poor job teaching math. But the states with the highest level of math proficiency had the lowest percentage of students who watched TV 6 or more hours a day. Likewise, the states which had the lowest levels of math proficiency had the highest percentage of students who watched 6 or more hours of TV a day. The truth is, TV is taking the place of parents. The children go to the TV for love, for feelings, for emotions, for comfort. It's the giant enemy pacifier. You know what? If you plug your kids into the TV, you're going to get TV kids. Not human or divine beings, but TV beings. Having children and rearing them is a lifetime calling. Play your role. Don't make the TV a surrogate parent. Problem number 2. Television presents a distorted picture of society. That's the conclusion of a new book, Watching America, What Television Tells Us About Our Lives. The book is written by Robert and Linda Lichter of the Center for Media and Public Affairs and Professor Stanley Rothman. In a review of the book, Don Coet reports, according to Watching America, millions of TV viewers nightly are visiting a nation where sexual infidelity is the norm, where citizens are murdered at a rate 1,400 times higher than actuality, where the rich commit most of the crimes, where businessmen are almost always the bad guys, where only liberal politicians operate in the public interest, where military officers are colonel blimps, and where religion is a silly superstition guaranteed to get guffaws from the laugh track. End of quote. One of the highlights of the book is the results of a survey of 104 Hollywood television moguls. Here are some of the results. 93% seldom or never attend religious services. 75% are politically left of center. 97% are pro-abortion. 80% do not think that homosexuality is wrong. 51% don't think adultery is wrong. 66% believe that TV entertainment should play a major role in promoting social reform. 43% endorse a complete leadership restructuring of America's basic institutions. These attitudes are reflected in the shows they produce. Advertisements also shape children's values. Media critic Neil Postman says, "The most recent figures indicate that by high school's end, a child will have seen about 1 million commercials, making them our culture's chief source of socializing values. Not mom and dad, church or school, but Procter & Gamble are transmitting the values we all share." Problem number 3. Television is negatively influencing children's behavior. First of all, it's making them fat and violent. The American Academy of Pediatrics said in a recent policy statement, protracted television viewing is one cause of violent or aggressive behavior. Television viewing also contributes substantially to obesity. Why? Well, first of all, children just sit there and watch TV. They're totally inactive. If you have nothing to do, you get into oral stimulation. You want to eat and drink. And what do you eat and drink? Junk food and soda pop and stuff that's a lot worse. The policy statement goes on to say that television watching contributes to alcohol abuse and promiscuity. The The statement reads, quote, "Although there is no clear documentation that the relationship between television viewing and sexual activity or the use of alcohol is causal. The frequency of adolescent pregnancy and sexually transmitted diseases and the prevalence of alcohol-related deaths among adolescents and young adults represent major sources of illness, injury, and death. American teenagers see an estimated 14,000 sexual references and innuendos per year on television, yet only 150 of these references deal with sexual responsibility, abstinence, or contraception. Therefore, the many implicit and explicit messages on television that promote alcohol consumption and promiscuous or unprotected sexual activity are a cause for concern." End of quote. Problem number 4. TV decreases creativity. A recent study by a team of Canadian researchers found that TV decreases creativity 20% in adults and children. The team studied the impacts of TV on an isolated town that only recently began receiving television. They were able to collect data before and after TV came to town. Dr. Brandon Centerwall, a psychiatrist known internationally for his analysis of TV's role in crime and violence, remarks, "It's interesting that this 20% loss in creativity corresponds to our 20% decline in average SAT scores in the past 20 or 25 years. Such a decline could have grave consequences for our nation." According to Centerwall, a 20% decline in creativity could mean ceasing to be a first-class technological power. The Canadian team found that in addition to reduced creativity, television caused a dramatic increase in aggressive verbal and physical behavior and a decrease in the drive to solve problems. Problem number 5. Television may be reversing the evolution of the brain and changing both the structure and function of children's brains. Jane Healy, adjunct professor at Cleveland State University and author of Endangered Minds, Why Our Children Don't Think, says that we're unwittingly rearing a generation of different brains. Her book is based on the latest research into the neuropsychology of learning. Her thesis is that young brains are plastic, which is what the Ascended Masters teach, and that what children see or do daily, especially during the critical years from birth through age 7, changes the structure of their brains and the way they function. According to a review of the book, Healy says that electronic media, fast-paced lifestyles, unstable family patterns, environmental hazards, and faulty teaching methods seem to be changing both the way children think and their actual brain structure. She believes we may be witnessing the start of a radical change in the way humans process information. Some neural routines, such as eating, function automatically, but we have large areas of uncommitted brain space that can be molded by our environment. According to the review of Healy's book, any activity that engages a student's interest and imagination can enrich the brain. However, says Healy, the large doses of TV viewing that are common in many daycare centers, schools, and homes are just force feedings of deadening junk food that contribute to lagging national academic skills. A recent study by the Mental Health Association also found that television influences the brain. The association said that we use more brain power to eat than we do to watch TV. Watching TV is one of the most effortless things we do, and therefore we're not strengthening the working of our reasoning or intuitive powers. They also found that when we watch TV, the pattern of brain waves we emit are similar to those emitted when we dream. This is very dangerous. It's almost as though TV were hypnotic, putting us into a dream state where we cease to distinguish from reality and unreality. We all know what it's like waking up from a bad dream. We were absolutely certain that it was really happening to us. That's how children react to TV. They enter that tube. They become part of the scene. And when they back off from it, and they're not watching TV, they will outplay the emotions that they have witnessed on TV. They have internalized them. They have not said, I'm now waking up when I turn the TV set off. They carry the soaps or the movies or the rock videos with them. There's no clear line of reality and unreality when watching TV. And that's even concerning the best of films, because a film is a space you enter into that is not real for a certain amount of time. And if all of your time is spent doing this, you're spending more time in the dream state, in the unreal state, hence the astral plane, than you are in actuality of life. Problem number 6. Television is teaching kids to eat junk food. A study released by the Center for Science and the Public Interest on June 3, 1991, says that children who watch television on Saturday morning are getting a cram course in unhealthy eating. Researchers counted 222 junk food ads during 4 hours of cartoons broadcast on ABC, NBC, CBS, Fox, and the Nickelodeon cable network. Most of the commercials were for sugar-coated cereals, candy, cookies, chips, fruit-flavored drinks, chocolate syrup, fast food meals, and pizza. Michael Jacobson, executive director of the center, said, "This kind of broadcasting is leading to eating habits that cause obesity, tooth decay, heart disease, diabetes, and other diseases." He could add that white sugar makes it difficult for children to concentrate in school. Junk food and junk food ads on television are one more reason why we are not educating our children. Problem number 7. Television, soaps, cartoons, sitcoms don't prepare children to deal with real problems. Life is problem solving. If your parents don't teach you that by meeting adversity, meeting challenges, with a can-do spirit that we can meet any problem as long as we are one with God, as long as we walk the path and believe in Him, He will not let us down. Problem solving is the greatest gift you can pass on to your children. If you haven't read the book, then read Peck's book, The Road Less Traveled. It's very important. He opens with the concept of problem solving. And the quote from Gautama Buddha, that life is suffering, and suffering has to do with desire. And you have to examine your desires and what you want out of life. TV characters resolve their conflicts in 22 minutes. This creates the false expectation of quick resolution to problems in the minds of children who may be frustrated that they cannot solve their problems so fast. They may become hopeless. They may give up. They cannot adjust to the fact that in the real world, life doesn't work that way. Furthermore, TV solutions frequently have nothing to do with reality. This is a major setback. What happens when you get on the path? What happens when you face your karma? When you face your I am presence? When you face the masters? And you have a tough situation, you have to get through it. A relationship, a marriage, difficult children. Do you get hysterical? Do you throw a fit? Do you get a nervous breakdown? Do you just quit, walk out, never be heard of again? People do all kinds of things like that today because they haven't been taught to stick and see things through to the end, and to pray about it and to work through it. And so people abandon their karma. So they want a quick fix religion. They want to be saved by Jesus Christ, who will take all this from them and take all their burden of karma and all their burden of sin. And they can sing songs to rock music in church and get straight to heaven at the end of this life, and therefore they have a carefree existence. I can tell you that the foundations of American civilization have been eaten away by termites, and it is rotten to the core, and people do not have the strong undergirdings of the pillar of faith and the traditions that come out of the prophets and the patriarchs and Jesus Christ and the apostles and the path of of Gautama Buddha and the understanding that if we are to make it in life, we have to walk straight into those headwinds of our karma. Problem number 8. Television teaches that the immediate satisfaction of wants is more important than delayed gratification from hard work. Neil Postman, professor of communications at New York University, says, immediacy is a major message of television. Commercials tell us that every single problem is solvable quickly through this drug or that detergent. This, of course, tends to bring into disrepute the whole idea of delayed gratification on which education is based. You work hard now for future achievement. Problem number 9. Television is undermining the basis of our civilization. Professor Postman says that our ability to build a civilization is based on our capacity for abstract thought. He argues that television is reversing our ability to think in abstract terms, and as a result, it is a de-civilizing technology. He says that there would be a much smaller loss of the ability for abstract thought if TV simply supplemented reading. But he says when television replaces reading, it becomes a cultural catastrophe. You do not have abstract thoughts when you are watching TV because you are watching images. You're watching scenes, you're watching people, you're listening to what they're saying. So all you are doing is taking in a belt of words and another belt of emotional impressions. You do not have to draw from life, observe, and then in your own mind think of solutions by logic, by abstract thinking. Abstract thinking is the ability to extract from a situation the essentials, the components, the geometry of it, if you will, and then to put it together in a different way to solve a problem. Abstract thinking gives us ingenuity, invention. We see a need for a machine to do this and that. Because we know about machines, we can create a machine that performs a certain service that we need. Inventors have minds that are able to put together the missing links of what science, what society needs in order to move ahead. All of that is lost when you simply tune into two belts, words and emotional experiences, and you keep following it along and following it along in the highs and lows of what the players are doing and experiencing. Problem number 10. Television is one reason why people are living their devachans while they are on earth. Devachan is a Sanskrit word. It refers to the place where people go after death to experience unfulfilled desires. My third lecture on dealing with death, discarnates, and malevolent spirits gives commentary on devachan, what it's all about, and what we can expect when we make the transition. The devachan is a constructive place. It's in the first rungs of the etheric octave. It is created by God for us so that we can play out our desires and see what comes of them. We leave our astral bodies outside when we enter devachan, and we are allowed to play out wish fulfillment, those things that we have not accomplished in this lifetime. They may come to no good end. We may eventually get bored with them. But we can also use our experience in devachan to work out our psychology, to prepare for our next life, or to prepare to be admitted to a retreat of the Ascended Masters before we re-embody. A meek man might be a great general or a scientist in devachan, and thereby gain a sense of peer approval, accomplishment, or become more bold. With TV, on the other hand, people are living out their fantasies while they are still in embodiment. I see TV watching as abdicating our opportunity for real-life physical experience of balancing karma and getting ahead. I see TV as a devachan, when it's not time for Devachan. From the moment you are born to the moment you breathe your last breath, you are on a track where you can balance karma, contribute good, make good karma, add to your rings of your tree of life. The more you are watching television, the more you are escaping to that which comes after this life. The more you are wasting the hours and losing the time when you could be engaged in constructive self-development, assisting others, caring for the poor, the needy. So many people needing help in this world, including illiterate children and adults. I mean, there is no end to what we can fill our days with. When children get used to ducking out of the challenge of dealing with life as karma, life as joy, as fulfillment, of giving love, when that is taken from them and all these hours per week are in the TV set, I fear, because I know they're copping out. They're not flexing the muscles of their spirits to wrestle with what everybody has. Everybody's got difficult karma, or we wouldn't be in embodiment. If children aren't taught to work with the challenges of life side by side with parents who show them that you can overcome any situation that confronts you, if that is not the, quote, TV they're going to get, if they're not going to get real life actualities, there are going to be exactly what they're portrayed to be. These lumps of potatoes, these potato sacks that sit before the TV set, and they're going to be permanently on the astral plane. TV is hypnotizing. Much of the programming on TV is of the astral plane. Most of the actors who are glorified are people who do not have light. They don't have a higher energy in their chakras. They are regurgitating the astral plane in and out of their auras. And the only way they can perpetuate themselves is to get on stage where all of the attention of the people is given to them. They take that light and energy and attention of children or adults. It perpetuates their existence, plus the films remain after they pass on, and people play them again and again, thus feeding them again, feeding the actors when they are on the astral plane themselves. So there is a certain motive in some actors and some actresses, and the ones who really do have light are kind of pushed out of the market because they will not compromise their standards and play the roles and the parts that they have to play in order to get to the top. So this astral consciousness that we see in fictionalized television helps people escape into a world of illusion. Only when you are in embodiment do you have the opportunity to make concrete choices to build yourself as an individuality in God that will survive beyond your physical body. You are here to do constructive things to improve your soul, yourself, and your society. There is absolutely nothing constructive about watching television. It is simply passing time and passing by opportunity. Because people are living their devachans on earth, and astral devachans at that, these are not the etheric octave, they have no place to go when they die except oblivion, the same oblivion they partook of their whole life while they watched TV. TV is oblivion. It is sheer nonsense. The sheer nonsense of it. Turn on Johnny Carson. I mean, for how many decades do we have to see this man tell his ridiculous jokes every night and get the titillation of his audience and everybody laughing at these stupid off-color jokes? And that's how people spend their evenings, watching that and all the rest of the garbage. It is very dangerous. Nothing is built by the individual in his aura in those hours, but he is taking on the aura of what comes out of the TV. Oblivion is the deepest levels of hell. It's where people go who have not built an identity in God. And that is where our youth are being taken by the Pied Pipers that come through that TV set, I'm convinced, subliminally. I'm convinced that the situation of television is why the Blessed Mother Mary tells us that many souls will be lost She said that at Fatima, and therefore we must pray the rosary and pray for the saving of souls who know no better because they've been propped up in front of the TV by ignorant parents. Television viewing is habit forming. If you are a parent with children, the first thing you must do is to get control of the television in your house. If you can't monitor the TV set 24 hours a day, you can buy and install a lockbox that blocks the flow of electricity to the TV. Once it is plugged into an outlet, the power is controlled by the turn of a key. There are similar devices to control VCRs and Nintendo games. This is a word of caution about VCRs. Some parents think the VCR is harmless or even beneficial. The children can watch wholesome videos like Walt Disney movies, and they're usually well behaved while they're watching. In fact, many parents use the VCR as a babysitter and a disciplinarian. If the child is restless or cranky, they pop a cassette into the VCR, and peace returns to the household, and they can attend to the things they want to do as parents. The danger of doing so is that children may not learn to deal with boredom or frustration or acquire the skills they could have if they weren't watching a video.
You have been watching The Coming Revolution in Higher Consciousness with Elizabeth Clare Prophet. Today, you've seen the second of 3 segments of The State of Education in America. Next week, Mrs. Prophet will take up the question, how do we solve the problems in American education, in part 3 of this eye-opening expose. The preceding program has been presented through the assistance of Church Universal and Triumphant, Box A, Livingston, Montana, 59047 1390. If you would like more information on this or related subjects, please call this number or write this address. For a catalog and information on the full-length version of this presentation and other videotapes on prophecy, the lost teachings of Jesus, and Saint Germain, call toll-free 1-800-323-5228.